Chapter 55. The History of Aristobulus, the son of Hyrcanus. Aristobulus, the son of Hyrcanus, was of such beauty of form and exquisite figure and understanding that his equal was not known. His sister Miriam also, the wife of Herod, was like to him in beauty, and Herod was wonderfully attached to her. But Herod was averse to appoint Aristobulus high priest in the place of his father, lest the Jews, being attached to him through their affection to his father, should at some future time make him king. Wherefore he appointed some one of the number of common priests, who was not of the family of the Asmodeans, to be high priest. At which Alexander, the mother of Aristobulus, being vexed, wrote to Cleopatra, requesting to have a letter from Antony to Herod, that he should remove the priest whom he had elevated, and appoint her son Aristobulus high priest in his stead. And Cleopatra granted this, and requested Antony to write a letter to Herod on this subject, and to send it by some chief men of his servants. So Antony wrote a letter, and sent it by his servant Gellius, and Gellius, coming to Herod, delivered to him Antony's letter. But Herod forbore to do that which Antony had written to order, asserting that it was not the custom among the Jews to depose any priest from his station. Now it happened that Gellius saw Aristobulus, and was greatly struck with the beauty of his form and the perfection of his carriage which he saw. Wherefore he painted a picture of his likeness, and sent it to Antony, writing beneath the picture to this effect, that no man had begotten Aristobulus, but that an angel cohabitating with Alexandra begat him on her. Wherefore when the picture reached Antony, he was seized with a most vehement desire to see Aristobulus. And he wrote a letter to Herod, reminding him how he had appointed him king, and had assisted him against his enemies, recounting his kindnesses towards him, adding a request that he would send Aristobulus to him, and he threatened him in this business for the words which he had sent back. But when Antony's epistle was brought to Herod, he refused to send Aristobulus, knowing what Antony designed, and on that account he disdained to do it, and he hastily deposed the high priest whom he had appointed, establishing Aristobulus in his place. And then he wrote to Antony, informing him that he already executed that which he had formerly written to him about the placing Aristobulus in his father's post before his last letter arrived. Which business he had to the time delayed, because it was necessary to debate the matter with the priests and Jews, after an interval of some days, as the thing was unusual. But it having passed according to his wish, he had immediately appointed him. But now that he was appointed, it was not lawful for him to go out of Jerusalem, attached to the service of the temple. And as often as he wished to compel him to go out, the Jews refused, and would not allow him, even if he should slay the greater part of them. Therefore, when Herod's letter reached Antony, he desisted from asking for Aristobulus, and Aristobulus was made high priest. Then came on the Feast of Tabernacles, and men, assembled before the house of God, beheld Aristobulus clothed in the sacerdotal robes, standing at the altar, and they heard him blessing them. And he pleased them so much that they exhibited their affections towards him in a very marked manner, which Herod, being fully informed of, was much grieved, and feared lest when Aristobulus partly gained strength, he should demand from him the kingdom, if his life should be prolonged, wherefore he began to plot his death. Now it was customary for the kings to go out after the Feast of Tabernacles to some pleasure residences at Jericho, which former kings had made. And there were many gardens adjoining each other, in which were wide and deep fish ponds, to which they had conducted streams of water, and had erected fair buildings in those gardens. They also had built in Jericho fair places and handsome edifices. Now the author of the book relates that balsam trees grew abundantly in Jericho, and that they were found nowhere else but there, and that many kings had carried them thence into their own country, but none grew, except those which were carried into Egypt. And that they did not fail at Jericho until after the destruction of the second house, but then they withered away, and never such sprouted forth again. And Herod went out to Jericho in quest of pleasure, and Aristobulus followed him. And when they came to Jericho, Herod commanded some of his servants to go down into the fish ponds to play as was customary, and that if Aristobulus should come down to them, they should play with him for some time, and then drown him. But Herod sat in the banqueting room, which he had prepared for himself to sit in, and Herod sent for Aristobulus to make him sit by his side. Also the chief of his attendants and of his friends sat in his presence. And he commanded eatables and drink to be brought, and they did eat and drink. And the attendants hastened down to the waters according to custom, and sported. And Aristobulus greatly wished to go down with them into the water, the wine now mastering him, and asked leave of Herod to do so, who replied, This neither befits you, nor any one like you. And when he was urgent, he admonished him, and forbade him. But when Aristobulus repeated his request to him, he said to him, Do as you please. And then Herod, rising up, went to a certain palace, that he might go to sleep there. And Aristobulus went down to the waters, and played for a long time with the attendants, who, when they perceived that now being weary and tired out, he wished to go up, they held him under water, killed him, and carried him out dead. And there was a great tumult of the people, and cry, and a lamentation was set up. And Herod, running up, came out to see what had happened, who, when he saw Aristobulus dead, bewailed him, and wept over him very tenderly, with a most vehement flood of tears. Then he ordered him to be borne into the holy city, and accompanied him until he came into the holy city, and compelled the people to attend his funeral, and there was no point of the very highest honor which he omitted to pay him. And he died when a youth of 16 years of age, and his high priesthood continued only for a few days, on which account enmity grew up between his mother Alexandra and her daughter Miriam, Herod's wife, and the mother and sister of Herod. And the execrations and revilings which Miriam heaped upon them were known, and although these reached Herod, yet he did not forbid her nor reprove her, through his great affection for her. He feared also lest she should imagine in her mind that he was well inclined towards the others. From hence these doings lasted long between these women. And Herod's sister, who was endued with the greatest malice and consummate artifice, began to plot against Miriam. But Miriam was religious, upright, modest, and virtuous, but she was a little tinged with haughtiness, pride, and hatred toward her husband.